Welcome to another interesting episode of BS Bible Study with Deborah. Today we shall be looking at two major creations of God that appeared in the book of Genesis and certainly scattered throughout the Bible, not mentioned too many times, but they are significant. And these two creations are the Leviathan as well as the Behemoth. Now, just take a deep sigh. We're not going to be talking about anything controversial here. Everything is going to be from the book of Genesis and Job. I'll keep it there because there are other places where the Leviathan and the Behemoth were actually mentioned, but I'll be talking about them today. So turn with me, if you would, to the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 20. Just for a bit of context, because actually the verse is verse 21. Now Genesis 1:20 says, "And God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." So the sky has a vault, okay? So God created creatures, the great creatures of the sea. The great creatures of the sea, of which the Leviathan, it didn't say so here. If you read all the text, hopefully you'll get the picture. So the great creature of the sea here refers to the Leviathan, and every living thing with which the water teems. So obviously there are all kinds of things: prawns, mollusks, crustaceans, and the fish department, and other things undiscovered, okay? As well as plants and planktons and all these kind of things. They all live in the sea. Even I'm sure mosquitoes can be found in still water bodies, but anyway. So and every living thing which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful, just like he did eventually with man. And it was the fifth day. And God continued on with his creation and said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. So God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds. So there's livestock and there's wild animals, okay? According to their kinds. So those of you trying to domesticate wild animals, God had a reason for having wild animals as well as domesticated animals. These are the livestock, according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. Then, God then said, let us make man in our own image. So just before God made man, okay, he created this large animal that lived in the sea, and the large one that lived on land. You'd say, well, how do I know it's the Leviathan and the Behemoth? Now come with me, if you would, to the book of Job. Remember the story of Job, where all sorts of catastrophes befell him. Why? Because God allowed Satan, who came to tempt Job on God's permission. Because don't forget, in the first book of Job, actually, it says that the sons of God, this Bible says angels came, but the Hebrew Bible says the sons of God, came to him after it had described Job as being blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil, okay? And all the description that goes with it, and it says that his sons used to hold parties or feasts, and him fearing that in all that they might have sinned, so he offered up sacrifices on behalf of them. So, sacrifices existed way, way, way before Abraham. And I'll prove it to you, okay? Because the book of Job actually predates Genesis. So one day the angels or the sons of God came to present themselves. This is Job 1:6, before the Lord, and Satan, okay, or Nehushtan, also came with them, or the deceiver. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" We know the response from roaming throughout the earth back and forth on it. And then God put it to him, have you considered my servant Job? Blah, blah, blah. So, a discussion ensued between God and Satan. And Satan told God, well, you blessed him. Why won't he like you? Stretch out your hand and attack whatever he's got, and so on. This story is not about Job necessarily. It's about the Leviathan and Behemoth. But for you to get a bit of context, I'm going through all this, and eventually, another day, the angels or the sons of God came again to present themselves before the Lord. Now, this presentation is not taking place, guys, on earth, okay? It's taking place in the third heaven, someplace. And Satan came again to present himself. Where have you been? Same answer. Have you considered Job? He's blameless and upright and a man who fears God and shuns evil. Ladies and gentlemen, have you noticed that nowhere here did it say that Job was tithing to the Lord? Okay, he only did this annual sacrifice when his sons threw a big party and invited their friends and their three sisters, and he did it preemptively in case they sinned. It wasn't something he did every start of the year or every time he received an increase with his things. At least the Bible didn't say that. So the devil was given permission, obviously, to to attack Job, but his life, he was not allowed to attack him. So we know what happened, and eventually his physical body was attacked, and then his friends came, and I'm not sure whether they were actually trying to to commiserate with him. It sounded at some point as if they were trying to commiserate with him, and at other points it's like, what's all this suffering? Just curse God and die, basically, and stop all this suffering. But Job, in his righteousness, recognized that the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh. My wealth didn't come from me. It's not about my hard work. It's not about the fact that I'm better than anyone. The Lord deemed it fit to give all these things to me, including children. And if he deems it fit to take them away from me, who am I to complain? I mean, that was his whole mindset. So finally, the Lord himself actually now spoke to Job, okay? And this is found in verse 38, okay? But before then, even in verse 37, even starting from chapter 36,